Welcome to Working and Wondering.
I'm one of your hosts. I'm Chris.
And I'm Martha.
And welcome back to our wonderful podcast.
Yes, welcome back.
All right, if you are here, this is going to be all about picking your route for traveling to Alaska. So if we haven't scared the hell out of you in the first two episodes about crossing the border, now you get to figure out how best to go up there.
Yeah, so there's many different ways to get to Alaska.
Which is surprising because there's not many roads.
No. So episode 3.
Yep.
Planning your route to Alaska.
All right. What options do we have? Let's start there.
First, let's start with flying. So,
That's easy. That's cheaters.
Yeah.
That's a cheater method.
No, it's a method.
It is a method.
It is a method. So taking an airplane flight, and I would recommend one of the popular cities, one of the bigger cities, obviously like Anchorage, because you can get to a lot of ground from Anchorage. You can also rent an RV. They have different rentals you can choose from.
Yeah, that's definitely an option. Most of the time, you're going to be flying in and out of Seattle. Alaska Airlines is probably your most popular. That's what we recommend. Their customer service is phenomenal. They're always on time or early. Yeah. So fly out. And like Martha said, I would not fly into anything in the southeast. Just know they're not attached to the road system. So if you fly into the capital, Juneau, you're going to
get there by boat or plane only.
Yep. So you'll be flying again. So fly into Anchorage, fly into Fairbanks. That's probably your two best options if you're going interior.
Well, unless they want to spend the money and fly to like some of the smaller southeast places like Juneau, Ketchikan, Sitka, and then rent an RV there. I mean, there's always that option. It will be spendy.
Yeah, because those are tiny remote areas. There's infrastructure there, don't get me wrong, but it's just not going to be something that you're going to be used to. Like, you go to Sitka, I think you've got like 13 miles of road system. It's pretty darn small, so you can see it pretty quick, but it's one of the most beautiful areas.
It is, aside from Juneau.
Well, of course, but your bias is get out.
I'm super biased. I'm from Juneau.
Exactly. So let's get back on focus here, lady.
Okay.
So we're going to say we're going to fly out of Seattle. You're going to fly...
Or Portland.
Hush. She just cut me off, y'all.
Or Portland.
I'm going to mute her. I've got control. All right. So you can fly anywhere you want. I don't care. Wherever your origin is, our recommendation would be to fly into Anchorage, and I'll explain why. Because Anchorage being South Central Alaska, it's really the hub of everything. So you can get almost anywhere you want from Anchorage. The other benefit is there's a lot of RV rental companies in Anchorage. So you can rent like a Class C Winnebago and then take off.
Yes.
So,
and you can get to a lot of the smaller cities all around. I mean, we can go dive into that a little more later, but fly in either from wherever you're flying from. Most connecting flights are Seattle or Portland.
Yeah, that's true.
Going into Anchorage.
So if you're going to fly up there, rent a Class C. That would be our recommendation.
Or B van.
Yeah, whatever
your
tickles your fancies. Just know that a lot of the times the rentals are going to be motorized. You're not going to find travel trailer rentals. You're probably not going to find Class A rentals. What we saw everywhere, either small vans like Bs or Class Cs, but Class Cs are probably 50-1 up there. So that is a really good way to go if you don't want to drive the Alaskan Canadian Highway. And just know, like, going from Seattle, we'll say, as a popular city, but it's really Bellingham or Abbotsford is the Canadian side of it, is almost 2,500 miles one way from border to border.
Yeah, and once you hit the Yukon going up to Alaska, it's a little more remote. So you're not going to see as many gas stations and stores. Not to scare you, but just know every gas station fill up.
Yeah, and you're definitely going to have to slow down. So if you decide to drive up, which we'll talk about some of those in a minute, but if you're talking about driving up, just know you're not going to make like progress like you would in the lower 48. You're not going to get 50 miles a day or 50 miles an hour worth of progress if you're doing 50 miles. It's just way slower. The Yukon has some serious frost heaves. Nothing that's going to damage your trailer, but just know there's options.
There's a lot of wildlife. Like, we've stopped on the mountain and there was goats. And we had to wait for them to pass by. And, of course, you know, it's a photo opportunity or take a little recording of it. They're beautiful. There's bears. There's bison.
Yeah, don't pet the fluffy cows.
Yes, don't.
So we're talking about different options. Of course, the first thing we said is fly up and rent. Now, that's not for everybody. It is expensive. The last time we looked at it was when my dad was back up in there in, say, 2020 or 2021. And it was like $250 a day to rent a Class C, just to kind of put that in perspective of what the cost is. So another option, if you want to fly up, but you want to see the interior part of Alaska, like Martha's talking about, fly up, do the rental, go run around the interior of Alaska in the Class C, and then take the Alaska Marine Highway ferry out.
Yeah, that's an option too. Or a one-way cruise.
Yes,
they do. Take an Alaska cruise.
That would be an awesome way. Either way, I mean, like the ferry's like it's more utilitarian. It's not straight luxury, but it has cabins. It has dining room. It has a movie theater. It has.
So the difference between the cruise and the ferry, obviously you're going to carry, if you bring your vehicle, you can bring it. A regular cruise ship, no. But you're going to have limited cabins on the ferry.
Yeah.
They have a little area where you can put a tent up. Chris, Ashley, and I, our daughter, we did that before, and Chris and I had bought a double wide cot tent, and our daughter a single cot tent. Yep. Which was really cool. And we got to put in the area where it's designated for tents. And
you literally camp on the front deck of the ferry. And I duct taped our cot tent and Ashley's tent to the railing.
Yeah, we were afraid, like, what if we slide a little, which we didn't have any problems. But it's like you don't know unless you know. And
we didn't. No. But duct tape saves the day.
And, of course, they have public showers. So they have showers you can take on there.
Restrooms and everything.
Yeah,
so
restrooms.
If you're going to fly up, just know it's not fly up, fly back. You do have that option. But if you fly up and ferry back or fly up and cruise back, that's really cool. So those are some options as far as the flight side of things. Now, let's talk about driving. There's clearly there's several different points of entry. Actually, there's over 20. I was doing research on this. I didn't realize there was that many.
Yeah, there's quite a bit, depending on what part of the U.S. you're at. In the northern part.
And where you're coming from. And also, when you're crossing the border coming into Canada, which way you're going to go. Martha's got a little mileage chart to give you some examples. So let's talk about Miami. Let's say Miami to Anchorage. I know that was one of the ones that was on there.
Well, just for reference. So we're referencing a lot of stuff today from the milepost. And we recommended that on our last podcast to get. Yep. That is like the Travel to Alaska Bible. Whether you go through Canada or not, this is something you definitely want. And in there, they do have a mileage chart, and it'll tell you, like, the distance. So if we're going...
Hey, let me talk for a second, lady.
Oh,
Cutting me off. So you also have a login, so you can actually go online, and they have all the itineraries. So you have the paper map, you have the actual mileage charts, along with a road map, and you have the paperback book. So just know, buy the milepost. It's worth every penny, but go ahead.
And on here, too, so Anchorage by the Season, just a squirrel just for a moment. And this is on this little paper. And there's a big map of it, of Alaska also. But it'll tell you, like, what the average temperatures are and the daylight, like how many hours of daylight. June 21st is summer solstice. So that is the longest day in Alaska. And so you're going to have 22 hours of daylight.
I disagree. There's still 24 hours in your day. Your day didn't change.
I said daylight.
Oh, technicalities. It's not the longest day. It's the most daylight of the...
Now, in December 21st is winter solstice.
Right.
And you're only going to get 5 hours and 28 minutes average.
Don't be RVing in winter solstice, y'all. Stay the hell out of Alaska in that time of year. It is cold and dark and might even be scary.
But you'll be able to see the...
Northern Lights. The Aurora Borealis is beautiful. Mm-hmm. All right, so what I was asking you to do, I'm going to take back over since she won't answer the question. So just to put it in perspective, Anchorage being kind of your hub for South Central Alaska, to go from there to Miami, one way is 5,434 miles. So if you're coming from Florida, which like we would, we know that it's a 5,000-mile trip from Davenport, Florida to Anchorage. So that would be a 10,000-mile round trip without taking into consideration touring around the state. Now, the state, although huge, is not massive as far as the road system. There is very few highways. But we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about point of entry. So we have gone in, we'll start with, let's go west to east. So we've come in off of Seattle, we'll call it, but Bellingham, Washington, Abbotsford, that's probably their busiest port of entry. If you go that way, you have basically two options. You can go the Alaskan Canadian Highway, which is the most popular,
Yes,
or the Cassiar Highway, which we've done.
we have.
Yeah.
With our travel trailer. Our previous travel trailer we owned years ago.
Yep. The Cassiar is more remote. It's beautiful. It's slower. There's a lot less amenities. So if you decide to go in or out on the Cassiar Highway, just know you're going to need to carry extra fuel, diesel exhaust fluid, anything that you might need for support as far as fuels go.
Absolutely.
You going to tell them about us on the side of the road and what I had to do while we were there?
Use the bathroom?
No, we ran out of fuel.
Oh, wait. Okay. So through the hilly area, and we were coming back down at the bottom of the hill, there was a little pull off area. And Chris went ahead and just topped off our tanks using the extra fuel we brought with us.
Because I was down below a quarter of a tank of gas and I was still well over 100 miles away from a gas station. Them numbers don't calculate. So bring some spare cans if you are going to drive to Alaska. Our recommendation, if it's your very first time going up there, would be the Alaskan Canadian Highway. And you could tell them some of the cool stuff we saw.
There's quite a bit. So we saw a lot of bears. We saw mama bear with the baby bears.
Mountain goats, sheep.
Mm-hmm. And I brought up the goats earlier. And then, of course, there's always, like, shopping.
Well, don't forget the
sign forest.
Yep.
Yes. Oh, that was fun.
Liard Hot Springs. Like, there's so much touristy type stuff that you can do on the Alaskan Canadian Highway. And just know it is paved except for areas of construction, which that changes day to day, year to year.
Yeah.
But there's nothing up there that's like scary as far as driving in. It's just
It
long.
is so beautiful driving that way. Actually, every way we've gone through has always been beautiful.
Right.
There was one funny time we were coming back from dropping our daughter off at college, and we had our travel trailer. Callie, our Rottweiler,
she played me.
She did. So when she wolfs at me in the truck, that means, hey, Mom, I'm hungry. When she wolfs at Chris, that means, hey, Dad, I need to go potty. So we were driving through the Rockies and in Canada, and she wolfed in Chris's ear, like really serious. And he's like, okay. He found a safe spot to pull over, out of the road, out of the way.
Right.
And he went to get her out of the truck, and she put her on the retractable leash, and she took off running. And she was playing. There was a freak snowstorm in August of, it was 2019.
Right.
And she was playing in the snow. Keep in mind, we were on our way back home to Alaska. So she already loves the snow, but it was hilarious.
Yeah, I got played by the dog. So just know if you do drive up July, there has been snowstorms in the Canadian Rockies. August. We personally saw that. By September, you're likely to see snow as you're going through the Canadian Rockies. If you go beyond September, you're almost 100% guaranteed, and it might be below freezing.
And you'll definitely need chains on your vehicles. So
if you go that late.
It may be always good to have chains because there may be that chance. You never know.
We're not getting into the safety stuff right now. We're talking about options. So if you drive in from Seattle and you go up the Alaskan Canadian Highway, take the Stuart Cassiar back out. That's one option if you want to see something a little bit different on the way back to the lower 48. Another option is
taking the ferry.
There you go. Martha mentioned earlier that you can actually put your vehicle, so you can put your RV and your tow vehicle on the ferry and go stay in a cabin upstairs, so you can't stay in your RV. Just know that.
But your pets will have to stay in your vehicle, whether it's your RV or your truck, SUV. We
had our dogs, two dogs, in the back of an SUV when we did it. We had a Nissan Armada at the time, and it's sad because they're locked up. They don't get. I mean, you're allowed to go down there several times a day, walk them, take them potty, and all that, but they still have to stay in the vehicle.
Yeah, and then of course we had the windows cracked open, and then when they call to say, "Hey, you may go see your pets for relief," then there's the sawdust that you take when they use the restroom and pick it up, like kind of cat litter type thing. Yeah,
kind of like cat litter.
Yeah.
So just know if you do decide to take the ferry, that is completely an option. Just know about the pets. That's important. Our recommendation when we talk to people, we always say, like, if this is a once in a lifetime trip for you, and our recommendation would be drive up and then take the ferry out. It's just such a cool experience because then you get to see all of interior Alaska. So you go in through Tok, go up to Fairbanks, come around, go down to Anchorage, Seward, Homer, Whittier,
Yeah, it gives you a full circle view of Alaska.
And then jump on the ferry and bounce out. And you can you can stop at all the ports you were talking about in Southeast.
Yes. And then they let you, depending on the time of day and stuff, you're able to get off the ferry in those small ports like Juneau, Ketchikan, Sitka. And we always recommend just going and just walking around and exploring and do a little shopping.
Right. And there's another option for those of you that aren't interested in necessarily driving through Canada, because we've had a few of our Fam Alley and our Venturesome Tribe tell us that, hey, I don't want to drive through Canada due to the restrictive nature of some of the firearms laws. So what's the option? Ferry up, ferry back?
Yeah, and depending on the port. So there's some ports where you're not going to get off in Haines and then have to drive through a small portion of Canada. They have different port of entries like Valdez and Whittier.
Seward,
but you'll have to check the schedule on the Alaska Marine Highway website and to see when that window's open. And then for your vehicles, and I was reading on there earlier, depending on the length, you're going to have to call and give them a total full length over the phone to make those reservations.
I'm having wait, I know what they're going to ask me. How much does it cost? So when we did this in 2021, what? You're shaking your head
2012 for the ferry.
Damn, I'm getting old. Times are changing. All right, so when we did it with the ferry, so it's been a minute, y'all. We had 85 foot of vehicle at the time. So, and that was because we had a U-Haul towing a car, we had a Armada towing a trailer. So we had 85 foot of vehicle. It was $7,500 for 85 foot of vehicle to go up. Now, I recently looked just to see what it would be for 60 foot of vehicle. So if we were going to do the dually and the Paradigm, and it was $7,000. So to put that in perspective, that's kind of what you're looking at, about $7,000. So if you're doing the math based on cost from fuel perspective, it is cheaper to drive in, drive out. But not by a lot, because the Canadian fuel prices are based on the liter, and it is substantially more expensive. I think the last we saw was just over $7 a gallon, what would be the equivalent on U.S.
Yes. So that's a 12-year difference between that, because that was July of 2012.
Right. And so we're talking, 25-foot less vehicle for roughly the same price. Just know you're going to probably pay about $7,000. Now, that wasn't cabin, food, and everything else. So if this is going to be a trip of a lifetime, just know it's not going to be something that you're going to be able to do frugally. Now, some of the other itineraries which we talk about, or they talk about, I shouldn't say we, it's not our book. We just happen to
utilize it
a lot. Mm-hmm. It always talks about going up either the ferryway, which is like here what they call the Klondike Loop, and so that is very similar to what we're talking about. You go in on the Alaskan Canadian Highway and then come out on the ferry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. I was holding a page for you.
All right, thank you. And then the nice thing about the book is they've got multiple itineraries. You can also it also talks about coming out the Alaskan Canadian Highway or the Cassiar Highway, which I think was a fun trip. We did do that. Now, I will say one thing. At the time, we had a little travel trailer. It was only 11.2 or 11'4".
Yeah.
We did come across a train trestle bridge that was 12'6". So be extremely careful when you're doing your route planning coming out of the Cassiar, because there's some low clearances.
Yes, you'll definitely want to map that out depending on the height of your RV.
Yeah, whatever it looks like. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it wouldn't be too bad as long as you're not like us. We're 13.4 right now, so obviously that would have been a huge mistake. It was about a 400-mile turnaround and go back if we didn't fit. It freaked us out because at that time we were brand new into we'll say most time RVing, because we were traveling all over. Yeah,
and we rented different types of travel trailers in Alaska, so this was like our very own travel trailer.
Right.
It was not a rental.
The other thing, unless you're going, we'll say if your home base is, we keep talking about Washington, but if your home base is in Washington, going in and out of the same port or the same border crossing makes sense. For us, every time we went up, we went out a different one and in a different one, just because we wanted to see different parts of Canada. Because we've come out as far east as North Dakota, and as far west as Seattle, and we've done 4 or 5 different entries on those, and every one of them's been fine. I mean, you heard our story. Abbotsford was brutal, but that was, I think, in my opinion,
it was a different circumstance, and not everyone's going to have the same experience as us. And honestly, since that first experience, kicked out of Canada, which was episode 1.
Yeah.
If you have not listened to it, go listen to that one. But we had a rough experience that first time. But after that, it's been smooth sailing because we researched
Yeah.
and we do our homework
Right.
and we write everything out and declare whatever we need to.
Yeah. And from like our next trip up would obviously be originating from Florida, most likely. So like I said, we're talking about 5,000 miles one way. We'll probably go up. I really would like to go up on the eastern part of Canada and actually go across Canada east to west. We've never been to any part of Canada east of what would be Minnesota.
Yeah.
Because we came down through
Yeah.
there.
And that's where we picked up the travel trailer.
Yeah, so the eastern part of the U.S. and Canada we haven't seen. So just know that you have the ability to go up kind of anywhere you want. You just want to make sure that you plan ahead. And just know, like, for us to go Florida back to down through California and then back to Florida, we figured it was going to be about $10,000 in fuel.
Yes, Chris does all the mileage and fuel voodoo math is what I call it.
Yeah, because I just look at it, average miles per gallon about 8. We usually average 9 to 10, but in hill country, we all know that it gets way worse. Mm-hmm. The efficiency is a lot less because when you're driving up there, as we briefly touched on, like the Yukon Territory has frost heaves, which no big deal. They're easy to drive on, but if you come around a corner doing 50 and you hit a frost heave, you're gonna jump your trailer, like legit jump it, and probably break leaf springs, axles, things of that nature.
And the semis going through Canada, holy moly, they are going fast.
They know that road way better than you do. Just get out of their way and don't try to keep up with them.
No, just let them go. And there are times where we've just pulled over and let other vehicles go around us because when we're going through Canada, we're going to go a little slower than what the speed limit is. And we do keep a mileage conversion, like little paper.
Oh, yeah, from the metric to the standard. I mean, miles per hour versus kilometers per hour. 120 doesn't mean 120.
I know. I was like, send it.
No, not in the U.S. So just think, those are some things that you want to think about. Like if we were to design like a perfect trip for everybody, it would be drive up and then
take the ferry
take the ferry out. Mm-hmm. But I also really like the idea that you mentioned about getting on the cruise ship and like fly up, rent your RV, go play all over the all over Alaska, and then take a cruise out. That would be cool. We've personally never done the Alaskan cruise.
There's one other option that kind of ties along with everything we've said but haven't mentioned but know about. We've heard of folks that we call it from the lower 48, us Alaskans up there. They'll buy a brand new vehicle or brand new RV or a slightly used one, take it one way up there, whatever means of traffic, usually driving through Canada, and then they'll spend all summer and then sell it.
Oh, yeah. And you can make a mint because there is hardly any RV dealers in Alaska whatsoever. So if you're looking for an opportunity to do that one way, that's brilliant, right? Buy an RV anywhere in the lower 48 that's a popular one. Don't go crazy on something that's like $1 million.
Yes.
But if you were to buy a Paradigm 340 RL that we're sitting in and drive it up there, by the end of the summer, you could turn around and sell this and either get all your money back or make a profit off it because there's so few dealerships up there.
There is. And it's slim pickings.
Yeah. There's people that make a living just flying down to the lower 48, buying trailers like tow behinds, flatbeds, cargo trailers, and just driving them back to Alaska and selling them. I mean, that's big business because to get something shipped in, like on a ferry or a barge from Seattle, is usually about $2,500. We looked at it from buying a vehicle and having it shipped up from Idaho, and it was going to be $2,500 just in shipping. So,
yeah, that was when we bought our dually. We ordered it January 21, and we picked it up April of 21, and it was cheaper for us just to fly down to Seattle, rent a vehicle, and drive to Kellogg, Idaho.
Yeah. The remote part of Alaska is what makes it awesome, but that also is where the complexity comes in on your decision. Like, what do we want to do? There is some negatives that we should talk about as far as your route planning go. If you rent an RV in Alaska, you are not allowed to take them on any of the dirt roads. And that's a big deal because the Denali Highway is awesome, right?
It is. We've spent many, many times there.
It's 135 miles east to west across Alaska, and it goes obviously from Denali or Mount McKinley, however you recognize it, all the way across to the. It basically goes Cantwell to Paxton and east to west across the state. But it's an area that you want to see. So you are limited on where you can take some of those. Where if you have if we had our 340 up there, I would not hesitate to drive across the Denali Highway. It's fine,
especially with our Moride independent suspension.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if you have a travel trailer or a fifth wheel and you want to do this, it is worth getting a robust suspension. Like the factory suspensions on most of these, we'll call them trailers or the towables, right?
Yeah.
They have a equalizer in the middle that doesn't do anything but hold the leaf springs. The Moride has the dampeners on them, like in the CRE 3000, where they have rubber bushings that really helps absorb the road shocks. The IS is awesome, right? You could go across a dirt road IS and not even have to worry about your trailer getting beat up. So those upgrades, something I would recommend. And if you haven't seen it yet, we do have a couple videos on the independent suspension system.
And if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll link that video at the end. If you're listening on podcasts, Venturesome Couple on YouTube, and then look up, there's a RV mods and playlist.
She wrote it, y'all. She should know.
I know. We have so many playlists. But we highly recommend Moride. If you do go to Moride and you decide you want independent suspension, tell them Venturesome Couple sent you. They're going to give you some credit towards some really cool accessories to add on while you're at your independent suspension appointment.
Yeah. And so anyways, it is absolutely worth having a upgraded suspension if you're going to drive up there. Not that the roads are bad. Like I said, they are paved. There is areas within interior Alaska that are not paved, but they're maintained roads. But let's be real, the dealers or the RV rental companies don't want people going all Dukes of Hazzard with their Class Cs.
Well, and a lot of it, too, it's based on their insurance and, like, how remote are you going to go, especially if you're visiting the land, you don't know the area. You know, cell service may not work. Maybe you can or can't get Starlink to work out there, but the trees may be obstructing view. I mean, there's so many variables. I get it from a business standpoint, but definitely check in with, if you choose to rent an RV, check and see what the details are.
Absolutely. And if they do offer insurance, it may be worth getting. I don't know what the costs are, just because rock chips can be a thing as far as windshield, flat tires can be a thing.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, we've done the round trip 5 times, and we've had 0 broken windshields, 0 flat tires, 0 suspension brakes. And we're not special. It's just knowing the roads and going, hey, wait a minute, we might want to slow down a little bit. But this shouldn't be in a hurry trip. Like, that's, I guess, the most important thing, no matter which direction you go, is take your time.
Yeah, enjoy the scenery. Enjoy, shop local, anywhere up there.
Everybody in Canada was awesome.
It was
minus the border. But that was self-imposed.
Lessons learned. But
the Canadian people are awesome.
It's so beautiful, and it was so clean every time we've gone through Canada. They have little turnout areas on the road, on the highway, that you just dispose of your garbage. And I love how they do that, and they just keep it so clean.
Outhouses everywhere up there, so like roadside poop stations and then trash cans.
Hey, we're RVers. We prefer our own toilets.
We bring our toilets with us.
We bring our toilets with us. And what do we use in our toilets?
Poo juice.
Liquefied.
Oh, look at you. You owe us, Matt. We do.
Yeah, our friend Matt from Matt's RV Reviews, he sells Liquefy now, and that's for toilet treatment.
So you made some good points there about the road system. I would not hesitate to do it. Just know that, like I said, take your time. People ask us all the time, like, when do you recommend going? All right, you're doing your travel plan, and we figured out, okay, we're going to go from Washington, and we're going to come out through Montana, and we're going to drive to Cassiar, and then we're going to come down the Alcan. When do we do it?
We pay attention to the weather. And like we showed you we're telling you, in the milepost, they have an Anchorage by season. And that's just going to be an average, and that's South Central.
Mm-hmm. In general. Yeah,
in general. So for us, we like going in May, towards the end of May, beginning of June, and we like to stay until almost September.
Yeah.
And the reason why, too, so in just outside of Anchorage in Palmer, Alaska, they have the Alaska State Fair the last 2 weeks, and it ends on Labor Day.
And that's when the weather starts going south anyways.
Yeah.
And the big thing for us is, obviously, if you're going to Alaska, you want to experience the outdoors and you want to experience the wildlife. By May, most of the time, all the snow's melted and you have king salmon starting to come in, which, that's always a fun thing to fish for. And then by August, you've got the silvers coming in. So you can actually catch all 5 species of salmon in one summer season. So expect to spend about 90 days up there. And I promise you, in 90 days, you will not do and see everything.
No, unless you're us, because we know what we want to do.
Well, that's different,
That
right?
is different.
But that's why we're doing this. That's what this whole thing is about, is to give you guys things to think about and plan, because we want you to make the most of your trip, not be afraid of it, but understand what you could be facing when you're doing this trip.
Absolutely.
So let's ask this, because our neighbor right behind us, literally right here.
Yes.
Let me wave to him. Say hello. We were talking to him earlier about Alaska. He was worried about it. He's got a Alliance Valor 36V11.
Which is about 40 feet long.
And he was, can I take this to Alaska? And the answer is?
Absolutely. Yes.
The semis. The salmon drive up there.
Yes, they do.
The semis drive up there, and they're 60 feet long. There's no hesitation whatsoever.
But as always, maintenance your RV before you go. Just like we're going to get into all that in the next episode. We'll get into that later.
Yeah. This is all about like your itinerary options, where you might want to go.
When we went full-time RVing and we sold our house in Alaska 3 years ago, we had bought an Alliance Valor 42V13, and that was just over 44 feet long. And we weren't going to hesitate to take that up to Alaska.
That is true. I was not even remotely concerned. So here's what I will say. Having a 4-wheel drive truck, in our opinion, is extremely helpful.
Or SUV.
Or SUV.
Yeah.
A 4-wheel drive is helpful. Not that there's anything that you're going to run across on average, but if you do get into any wet, muddy roads or campgrounds, snowy, it's just helpful to have. It's something, like you mentioned, chains.
Yes. And we did get chains when we were traveling frequently through there. Yeah. It's a good safety thing. It's just no different than like going to Reno, Lake Tahoe area. Certain times a year, you're going to definitely need chains going through Colorado.
I really wouldn't recommend getting up there before May. I wouldn't stay till September. You can push it. You can travel up there. Your friend did it in the winter.
Yeah, but most people do not recommend going in the winter. I mean, it's a big, huge safety thing too. And you get stuck on the side of the road. An example, years ago, one of Chris's coworkers, Taylor, he went up there, or he was going through Canada with his mom traveling. And Chris and I will talk about this device that we use. It's a safety thing, a satellite communicator. He borrowed it going through Canada, and they actually popped a tire and got stuck on the side of the road, and they were miles away from anything. Like, you could not walk to a gas station. That's how far away they were.
Yep.
And they used that safety device, which we'll bring up in a later episode.
Right.
But you just never know.
Is there anything else we want to cover as far as like options? We've told them, if they haven't already, this is the 3rd episode that you have heard. Go get a milepost.
Yes.
That is a must.
It is. So we talked about flying up to Alaska and flying back and renting a vehicle or staying in a hotel. I mean, there's that.
Oh, there's some things you may want to think about. We've talked about border crossing on our last episode, but I want to make sure we cover it on this one in case this is your first time. Canada is extremely strict about their laws, and if you have a criminal record for whatever reason, make sure you check in advance that you're actually authorized to drive through Canada before you choose to do that option.
Because there's different levels, which we're not going to get into, but because there's so many to go through. But yeah, check in with them.
Yeah.
Because you may be able to still go through, but you may need like a permit of some sort.
Yeah, some kind of waiver or whatever. Just know that there's some nuances when it comes to Canada, but we covered a lot of that in the border crossing.
So I'm sure we've given our listeners and viewers a lot to think about how to get up to Alaska, whether it's flying or driving or taking a boat, a ferry, or cruise. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Let us know down below in the comments. How do you want to go to Alaska? How do you want to experience it?
Yeah, let us know if you think there's another option that we haven't explored or that we haven't given you information on, because we're always wanting to pass it along to our Venturesome Tribe and our working and wandering crew to let them know, hey, here's some options you haven't thought about. So our next video, what's going to be about? It's near and dear to my heart. Our video. Good Lord, I'm a YouTuber. Our next podcast is going to be about
safety equipment.
Everything you need to know about prepping for going in and out of Alaska. You notice I said prepping, right?
Yes.
That might be a hint. This is near and dear to my heart.
Well, to both our hearts, because we always pride ourselves on, giving really good safety tips.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is going to apply to everyone, whether you're going to drive through Canada or fly up there or take the ferry. But either way, you're going to
need these things.
And they're not like the average things that you would normally have if you've never been to Alaska. I mean, think about it. I'm from there. Chris lived there. We lived there. We went on all these adventures. So we're going to give you the best safety equipment list and tell you why.
Yeah, we hunted in the middle of BFE nowhere, Alaska, out in the middle of the bush. So just know that the stuff we're going to recommend isn't going to be go buy bug spray, go buy bear bells.
We do have a good recommendation on bug spray that works really well.
But we're not going to tell them now.
No, it's going to be
Thank you very much for listening. We appreciate you subscribing to our podcast. As you mentioned, if you're watching this on YouTube, give us a thumbs up.
Yep. And don't forget to subscribe if you have not subscribed already on our YouTube channel.
And download it anywhere and follow us on the podcast platforms. We are absolutely everywhere.
Yes. Other than that, thank you for listening or watching and enjoy every moment.